forsaken booth. The truth is you sadly mistaken. Proof I'm better than.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. We're going to talk about Night 2, Sunday, WrestleMania 38. Short and sweet. Not nearly as good as Night 1. Not nearly as good as Night 1. Still some fun stuff on it. Just not nearly as good as Night 1. Night 1 was surreal. Night 2 got surreal at some points. You know, it just went full, we don't care. We're throwing our hands in the air, and whatever happens, happens. And it got fun. Like, you can't script real fun. When people are really having fun, it really ain't according to plan. All right. So I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. But what really weighed this show down, I'm going to be honest, the New Day stuff. And quite frankly, I didn't care for the main event. And in the early matches, like the early matches, I was kind of like, they were okay. But I was just kind of like, didn't really care. Let's go through it. Triple H, he opened the show. He wanted to thank us, and he left his boots in the ring. So that was really emotional. We started the night with Triple H's formal symbolic retirement. You know, he had already announced that he can't wrestle anymore. But this was just basically a ceremony that wrestlers do when they leave their boots in the ring. And he's saying that's it. You know, no more. But he ate up a lot of time. Between him and more Gable Steveson, I think this was the first 15 minutes of the show. And at this point, I was starting to grumble. Because I'm like, okay, we want to start with Triple H, all right, but we really need to get to the action. Like, we really need to, because I'm not a fan of the 4-hour show. And we got almost another one here. That was probably 3 hours and 40 minutes or something like that. I am not a fan of all of this unnecessary filler. I hate it. I hate it so much. So, RK Bro, the Street Profits, and Alpha Academy, the RK Bro win. Which, maybe I should have seen coming. I think I may have picked Alpha Academy. Actually, no, I didn't pick the RK Bro. So, the Street Profits, who were teasing that they were going to turn heel, had gotten a lot more aggressive, seemed to be more, dickish in recent weeks. They're going to have a WrestleMania toast with RK Bro, and it seemed like prime heel turn situation here. So they all get ready to share the drinks, the liquids, or whatever. And then Chad Gable, they called in Gable Steveson. I forgot. I'm getting my Gables mixed up. So Gable Steveson gets in the ring. He gets a cup. And they're about to do a toast. Then Chad Gable smacks the cup out of Gable Stevenson's hands. Then they go through this whole thing with Gable saying that this is not how Olympians act. And when you're in my presence, you better shush. And he gets suplexed by Gable Steveson. And everybody pretends to care about this. Nobody cares about this. I don't see why we needed. This was a waste of Randy Orton, to be quite honest. I mean, look, I know they've been telling this story for several weeks now. It's a little too late to complain about this, but I was kind of like, I'm just looking back at it in retrospect. In retrospect, did we really need to have this match on WrestleMania? Was it really necessary? No, not really, no. And the Gable Steveson stuff, again, not really necessary. Came across as really manufactured. David Vixen's band got really triggered. Oh, he got so triggered. Oof. This Gable Steveson thing is another crusade of his. I did a video on Gable Steveson if you're so inclined. So we're going to do, if you're interested, I'll probably put it in the description. But since I likely won't remember, just go through the channel and put in Gable Stevenson's name. I think I went through the case of, but anyway, he got accused of sexual assault. But it didn't stick. They kept claiming it was a technicality. You're like, okay. Whatever you say. Anyway, I didn't mind this match. I just didn't care. The second match, Amass versus Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley had a pretty good entrance. He was on the bodybuilding stage, and they shot him like he was Andre the Giant with the muscles and everything. It was pretty nice. The crowd wasn't as into it on this show as they was on the Raw or the two Raws that they teased this match on. those crowds were really hot for this thing. This crowd was just kind of like, okay, we'll see. Amass took most of the match in terms of being dominant and being physical. They made Bobby fight from underneath, which I think was actually pretty cool. Lashley bitch slapped Amass at one point, which was wild. I mean, it was just straight up wild. But they gave Amass most of the match to show off his offense and show off his abilities. And he, of course, had a very limited move set. He's a monster. He doesn't need to do that much. He's a little bit better than the Great Khali. He's not awful, in terms of a guy his size. He's not going to be Rey Mysterio or Ricochet or anything like that. So for a guy his size, he was painfully average. But they showed that Bobby Lashley was fighting from underneath, was pretty crazy. The gorilla press from Amass, where he tossed Lashley in the air and just kind of let him fall. I was like, oh, it looked like he's going to kill him. Then the crowd really got into the match when Bobby Lashley suplexed Amass. Because, the crowd just was like, oh shit, finally somebody's doing something to this big dude. And Lashley wins with 2 spears. And I was like, wow. Okay, Amass has been toppled. I didn't get my big hurt business thing. Now the question is, what do you do with Amass? He lost now, so now he's not the unstoppable, unbeatable monster. What are we gonna do with this guy? Your guess is as good as mine. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Because I'm really at a loss now. I'm thinking part of the draw was to let him be the monster, and eventually be the guy who can challenge Roman or challenge Brock or something like that, and be a giant for one of them to slay. But they fed him to Bob, man. Look, I ain't mad at that. But, you could use a younger star, and Amass at least is younger. But hey, I'm on the Bob train always. So Bob wins, and I'm not mad about that. The third match, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn. Now, your mileage may vary on this match. This was absolutely Looney Tunes. Everything about this match made no fucking sense. It was just turn your brain off and watch it. You have to experience it. I was sitting there I cannot believe WWE is putting on a match that featured a giant mousetrap, a boot that you pull and you kick. I don't even know where that comes from. It's like they might use it to train goalies in soccer or something like that. But what in a giant hand? I don't even know where that giant hand. Where do you even get these things from? All these gags. Where do you even get these things from? Essentially, Sami Zayn was defeated in a 5-on-1 match because he was kicking the shit out of Johnny Knoxville, just beating his ass, really. And then various members of the Jackass crew would either distract him or beat him up from behind. So you had Chris Pontius, who showed up as Party Boy. Michael Cole was screaming it's Naked Minion 2.0 because he was stripped down to his thong. The crowd was eating this crap up. Wee Man. Now this was actually funny. Wee Man comes from under the ring and is just lighting fire to Sami Zayn. He was the only one who took this so seriously. He is really trying to tear into Sami Zayn, and then he actually body slammed him. Now the body slam was actually fucking cool. I mean, it was. Everybody wants Wee Man versus Hornswoggle at WrestleMania next year. Fuck it with Vince, you'll probably get it. But Johnny Knoxville was actually doing wrestling moves in the middle of this stuff. So he's doing a tornado DDT. He did some other things. They did the hijinks where, oh God, Johnny Knoxville waited until Sami Zayn climbed to the top rope. It's of course, this is where you have to turn your brain off because Sami Zayn almost never goes to the top rope. To do what? He doesn't have a top rope finish or anything like that. So why did you gag the top rope? And it was a collection of gags where, as you stumble through the match, Johnny Knoxville has all these traps put up all over the place. Like the table full of mouse traps that they pull from under the ring. Sami Zayn was like, who put this under? Oh, you did this, didn't you? Kind of like, hey, Johnny Knoxville has booby trapped the ring. He has booby trapped the outside area. But it doesn't make sense because, like, wouldn't Sami Zayn see a giant fucking hand? Wouldn't he see that? Like, that would be the first thing I would notice. I would be like, what's this? What is that contraption over there, and what's the purpose of it? Like, what does it do? Anyway, there was a taser involved, and Sami Zayn kept getting hit in the nuts. He got hit in the nuts. He got tasered in the balls. He got kicked in the balls with the thing, the soccer kicking thing. And he got pinned via giant mousetrap, which was actually a botched spot. So your mileage may vary. If you like comedy wrestling, you probably love this. I know that looking at Twitter, a lot of people actually like this match. I was legit surprised at how many people actually literally enjoyed this match. Where I laughed at some of the absurdity of it, such as the giant hand, that's why I keep talking about it. Like, it's like Smash Brothers. It looks like a fucking giant hand just came out of nowhere, like, what pop on Sami Zayn. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious? A giant hand just comes out of nowhere and knocks Sami Zayn on his ass? And, like, nobody sees it. Nobody's paying attention to it. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing in the fucking world, man. So, you had the ring was booby trapped. They had secret toys all over the place. Some people are really going to like it. Other people are not. I'm kind of in the latter part of the conversation. I really don't like this much comedy wrestling. And so I'm just kind of like, it wasn't as goofy as the Invisible Man or the Blow Up Doll, but it was still silly, and it's like a Speedy Gonzalez cartoon. I was like, man, I don't know about this one, dog. A lot of people like this though, so I'm in the minority because I'm kind of tired of the comedy in wrestling. I think it's too much of it. That's just me personally. Sami Zayn losing, well, it was like 5-on-1. Like it's not like Johnny Knoxville beat him by himself. Not only did he have a ton of fucking contraptions, including a taser, but he also had all kind of outside interference. So, yeah, it's not that big of a deal, to be quite honest. And Sami Zayn, this is a situation where you want the heels to get their comeuppance. And so that's what happens. Sami Zayn being the heel, he got his comeuppance. Mileage may vary on whether you actually like that shit or not. Naomi and Sasha Banks versus Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley versus Carmella and Zelina versus Natalya and Shayna for the women's tag team titles. This match was just fine. It was fine. It wasn't awful. It wasn't great. It was just fine. Naomi and Sasha Banks win. I think that was a bad call. Sasha rode a Lamborghini to the ring, but I think the winner here is that Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley showed up as quote-unquote Batman and Catwoman. Now, Rhea looked nothing like Batman. Nothing. But I'm guessing they decided to modify that so they wouldn't get a cease and desist from DC or something. But you had Liv Morgan with the cat mask and the whip. My goodness. Could they be queer baiting more? I mean, like, what next? What do they have to do? Does Rhea Ripley have to pull out one of Liv Morgan's titties and tease it with her fingers or something like that? How much more queer baiting could they do than having Rhea Ripley dressed as Batman and Liv Morgan dressed as Robin? Like, come on. Just get it over with already, man. Carmella and Zelina, they had no chance of winning. Natalya and Shayna, they had no chance of winning. But it was just about seeing cool stuff, I guess. Like the test of strength between Sasha Banks and Rhea Ripley was absolutely absurd. It made me laugh because I was like, you had Sasha Banks had to jump to grab Rhea's hand, and then she was immediately overpowered. But she countered it by utilizing, some lucha libre. But then she found that Rhea was too strong. So they actually took some time to show off the future stars, Sasha Banks, who is a star now, and Rhea Ripley in the future. And before it divulged into madness and everybody was everywhere doing everything. Zelina did a really good moonsault on Rhea Ripley. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Carmella is actually, if they were allow her character to develop into mature, she might actually be able to do something. Because Carmella is not terrible. You know, I know a lot of people are just kind of like stupefied by that, but that's why I always focus on the characterization of Carmella, is because her ring work is actually improving. You know, in terms of her ability to work and not kill herself or anyone else, she's actually not terrible. And she's been doing this for a while now, you know, and she can't do like super complex moves too much, which nobody should be doing anyways, trying to get too complex unless you know, really good like that. But she can have a very basic wrestling match, you know, and she's sort of was one of the linchpins of this match in terms of actual work, you know, so it was very weird, very, very weird. I thought Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley would win this match because I figured they would want to give something to the Liv Morgan fan base. But I kind of overlooked that the Naomi fan base is just as annoying. And to be quite honest, Naomi hasn't been a champion in a long time. Look, I don't think Liv has ever been a champion. No, she hasn't. She's never been a champion of any kind. So it is what it is on that front. It's just another day in the office. But for Naomi, she had been a top contender before. But it's also for Sasha Banks too, because you have the two women's titles are tied up. So what do you have to do? You gotta build another division. So put Sasha in the tag team division so her and Naomi can have tag team matches, and then you can just rotate their opponents. Since none of this stuff is about actual Rock and Roll Express, the Rockers type tag teams anyway, it's all just people thrown together. So it ought to be fine. And considering Sasha Banks doesn't do 100 fucking jobs, the titles at least won't be getting beat on regular TV every goddamn week. So this was fine. You know, this was fine. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It just was what it was for me. I really just want to watch Rhea and Liv do things to one another. The fifth match on this show, AJ Styles versus Edge. Now, this match was very good, but it was also very slow. This is another mileage may vary kind of match. If you like super fast paced AEW style matches, you know, this is not going to be for you. If you like slow methodical storytelling, this is your type, but it still might be too slow. For me, it was too slow. And also you had this situation where AJ was bleeding before the match, and that's all people were thinking about. Why is AJ bleeding? What is going on with AJ? There was a bunch of conspiracy theories. Did he run his head against the wall like Goldberg? Did he get burned like The Undertaker? What happened? What occurred? And they found out he apparently walked into the star as he was trying to get into the ring, and it slit his face open. And so he was bleeding. And that's all people were focused on. He's bleeding. Why is he bleeding? Why is AJ dying already? Just the thought of being around Edge makes him bleed. I don't know. But Edge is the senior member of the roster now. I think he's the only guy on the roster currently that was there in 1999. I don't think there's any other active wrestler in WWE that was around in 1999. So, but Edge was there. So Edge get all the new gimmicks. Edge gets the purple lights now. Edge gets the fire now. He gets the throne. You know, he gets everything. All of everybody's old shit. I want it. He's out here like Vampire Hunter D. And I was, you know, like kind of like, okay, well, what are we going to do here? I'm looking at him like he's obviously taking the Gangrel character to the next level. He looks like a vampire, you know, so he's obviously doing like a Vampire King type of gimmick where they decided, okay, since everybody does really love the Brood stuff that he's been doing, let's just go back to that. And plus it's a part of the Edge character anyway that's kind of been unexplored, was heel vampire Edge that was taken to the extreme. And since we haven't really scratched that surface yet, let's just go into that. And that seems to be what they're doing. And his entrance fucking ruled. You know, his entrance was amazing. AJ Styles just kind of had like a regular AJ Styles entrance. You know, I do wonder, like, why did some guys get special entrances and other guys didn't? You know, But it's not like AJ Styles needed it. Like, what is he going to do? Ride in on a horse or something like that? Like, we don't really need anything too crazy. Maybe a special video package or something like that for AJ Styles would have been nice, but whatever. He was bleeding all over the place and making everybody upset. So I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, the match itself, I liked it. I thought it was a really good match. I hated the finish, though. The finish, just saw Damian Priest just show up, and just by standing there, AJ Styles was like, huh? Damian Priest? What your dog on it? What are you doing over there? And all of a sudden, he just jumps right into a spear and gets pinned. And I was like, oh, get the fuck out of here. Come on. Now, they have been telling the story the whole night of AJ's rib cage and his arm. Edge is smart, so he targets two body parts. He targeted the arm, which actually some moves I haven't seen in a long time, like a shoulder breaker. He has to use a shoulder breaker. He has to use an abdominal stretch. I haven't seen one of them joints in forever either. And they actually showed through stories that Edge has studied AJ Styles. He was able to counter a lot of AJ's spots. Particularly, I like that he countered the calf crusher into an armbar. I thought that was sweet. Like, okay, that's pretty sweet. And Edge is looking for submissions. He's looking for like the kind of the ground game. And AJ was selling a lot. Maybe he's selling too much, but he was selling a lot in this match. The suplex on the apron was controversial, to say the least. I know a lot of people were like, Edge's neck is, so it's probably not a good idea to do it. And I concur. I don't think we should be doing suplexes on the ring apron. They were the only guys who were going to do it, so that's kind of how it was going to be. But I don't think we really needed it in order for the match to be good. And I think they had a good match. I just think it was too slow. That's it, you know. It was kind of grueling. And it took the crowd out of it that it was so slow. Like, the crowd picked back up when the Styles Clash happened. Then people was like, oh. And, you know, you kind of want to get some of that stuff a little bit earlier, too. But they were working their shit, you know, and you don't let the crowd dictate. You lead the crowd. So they were leading the crowd up to that point, but the end didn't hang on the beginning. You know, Edge shows up alone. He fights AJ Styles alone. And now all of a sudden, Damian Priest and him are laughing in the ring together. And Damian Priest didn't even do anything. He just kind of just stood there. And I'm just kind of like, oh, come on. Now, I did hear the stories about Edge starting a new faction. And Damian Priest obviously going to be a member of that faction. That works for me. Damian Priest is tremendous, obviously. I think he has a character that fits whatever Edge is doing right now. The whole judgment thing with the colors. And you seem to fit that perfectly. People have been asking, hey, who else do you think should be in it? I think Shotzi should be in it too. But that's just, you know. That's just me, and I can't say that because, you know, she's on SmackDown, they're on Raw. I don't know how that's going to continue to matter, but we'll see. And there's plenty of people to choose from, but I think Damian Priest was a good first choice, and I just wish that they had teased that more, and, you know, maybe they could have just had a short conversation where Edge says, like, hey, I like what you're doing. The whole Damian side, I like this. You know, you're acknowledging your shadow. You know, you're looking at this whole thing, and if people disrespect you, you're willing to go out there and bust some heads. I like that. And then Damian Priest probably drops the gem, like, maybe you should do the same thing too. Maybe guys like Seth Rollins, maybe guys like the Miz wouldn't be disrespecting you if you showed them your Damian, show them your dark side. And then that leads to Edge just fully embracing his shadow. And then we can have Damian Priest be the reason AJ Styles loses. Because we've had a conversation before about this whole thing. And since these characters are essentially doing similar things anyway, it would have made perfect sense. You could have fixed this whole thing with a conversation. Now, I don't like the idea, again, of angles being shot. And that's what happens here. This was an angle that was shot. Oh, shit. Well, instead of just having AJ lose a grueling match, and then Damian Priest maybe come out there, to, put Edge's coat on him or something like that, or whatever he's going to do. Is he going to be his Diesel, his Virgil, or, just like his protege? We don't know yet. But in any event, I did not care for the finish here. Like the spear is fine. The springboard into the spear was great, but the distraction of AJ Styles just made no sense. We didn't even need the distraction because we had been shown throughout the night that Edge is perfectly capable of scouting AJ Styles' moves and countering them, and coming up with effective counters. That was already baked into the story. We didn't need Damian Priest. So that frustrated me. So did this match live up to the hype? Because it was one of the matches I think everybody was excited for. But once it happened, I think a lot of people just kind of slumped away. Kind of like, yeah, it was good. And then it just kind of moved on. They didn't talk about it was great. It was fantastic. It was awesome. Yada, yada, yada. It was just kind of like, yeah, it was good. We wanted to have a good match. There's a good match. And then they shot an angle at the end. And who's going to be in his thing? It's like, yeah, we brushed AJ to the side already. It's like, yeah, nah. Not a fan. So I hated the finish, but everything else during that match was actually pretty good. I just wish the pace was a little more up. But there's nothing you can really do about that. At least not at that point in time. Then we got the fuckery of Sheamus and Ridge Holland defeating the New Day in which should have been on SmackDown before the first commercial break. The less said about this, the better. Who gives a shit? That was a misstep. That was a huge misstep on this show. Because night one didn't have this kind of stuff. And they certainly didn't have this formatting issue. Because they just had to shoehorn that in. It means, other things got rushed. But the absolute insanity of Pat McAfee, Austin Theory, Vince McMahon, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is a story that is melting in my brain currently as I attempt to try to process the block of ice that ended up as my brain at the beginning of this to the end of it. The actual match, Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory. Vince McMahon comes out to give Austin Theory a personal introduction and introduces him as a future WWE Universal Champion. And then takes a selfie with Austin Theory, leading us to believe that Austin Theory is his boy, is his guy. Then Vince goes to sit ringside to watch the match. Pat McAfee gets a fucking hero's ovation. He comes out to Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, a tremendous song. And you know what? Hadn't really considered it as a wrestling theme before. But whoever did is a fucking genius. Because you got the people singing whoa, 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 the entire time. And yes, I know licensed music. Oh, everybody's going to sing a song that they know. Of course. That's the part of the appeal for, the ECW crowd and to the AEW crowd is just singing a song that you know. But the song should be, because they think that the song should be familiar to, the people listening. I'm going to come out to my fight song is going to be my favorite song. And it's going to be some shit that you heard on the radio 100 times. I prefer the song to benefit and to be fitting for the character. The song is just like the tights. It's just like the gear. It's an accessory. And you need to have gear that fits the character. You need to have music that fits the character. But you should also try to avoid those music unions if you can. Music unions are a motherfucker. They are awful. So let's go on. Pat McAfee gets the hero's welcome. He gets the White Stripes playing. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders are out there. They're doing their thing. It all is all very exciting. The energy level is all the way up because Pat McAfee is connecting with the people. They love him. Austin Theory is a shithead. Everybody hates him. So this is great. They work the match, and Pat McAfee shows off his tremendous agility, with doing a Frankensteiner. He did a commentary for his own match while he was beating up Austin Theory. But he also took a pretty good beating, too. Austin Theory laid his stuff in, and his stuff looked good. Pat McAfee missed a swanton, but his form was great. Just had excellent form on that swanton. You also had the superplex spot, because oh man. So they did the old trick where Austin Theory is climbing to the top. He gets cut off by Pat McAfee. Then Theory pushes McAfee off. McAfee does a full flip, lands on his feet. And Austin Theory's like, oh shit. And then McAfee runs and leaps Kurt Angle style to the top rope and does a superplex off of it. Tremendous stuff. The crowd was eating this alive. Absolutely gobbling this up. At the point of the finish, Austin Theory is going for his finish, 8-town down, I think it's called, or whatever. They need to change all of this. 8-town down, they need to change all of that. This whole thing needs to be repackaged. Not his name, but the music, the finisher, all that stuff needs to be repackaged. In any event, Austin Theory tries for his finish and he gets rolled up. 1, 2, 3. He gets pinned. Now, at first, I was pissed because I was like, this is a guy who beat Intercontinental Champion Ricochet in like 2 minutes. This guy has beaten Finn Balor multiple times, and they had him lose to a fucking commentator. Like, the commentator literally came from behind the desk and pinned him. That's the problem with these fucking celebrity matches. That's why I don't like them. You know, the old K100 wrestling informer Billy Body always says the celebrities never lose. They lose sometimes. They rarely lose. And none of them lost here, because Pat McAfee actually is technically a celebrity, because he's not a wrestler. He was just very good at wrestling. So they had a good match, you know, and I was thrilled with it. I thought it was very good. And the crowd was hot for it and hyped for it, and they really creamed when McAfee won. So then they did the angle, and McMahon is outside talking to Austin Theory. And he's giving him some advice, you know, talking to him, whatever. Pat McAfee is jazzed up. He gives McMahon some lip. McMahon threatens to take his coat off and get in the ring. Then he actually does. He takes his coat off. He takes his suit jacket off. He takes everything off. And he gets in the goddamn ring. So everybody, myself included, I was wrong. I was like, 76-year-old Vince McMahon would never work a match. And so technically this was a match. Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon. Because he called for the referee, told the referee to ring the bell. Austin Theory is outside the ring doing horrible shit, hitting people from behind, and he crashed McAfee's nuts into the ring post, which is pretty much his undoing. Vince threw a couple of failed clotheslines, one of whom, you know, might have actually been pretty good. But Vince, as a jacked up Mr. Burns, and is toying with the crowd with his football. It's so much fun. Vince is having a blast. I'm having fun watching old man Vince, you know, barely make it around the ring. It's hilarious. McAfee looks like he's going to fight back, and Austin Theory takes him out. So eventually, Pat McAfee can't get up anymore. Vince McMahon pins Pat McAfee, which, you know, is okay because Pat McAfee is a commentator. It's not okay because this guy just beat Austin Theory. You know, like, come on. We need to have some consistency here. Anyway, Austin Theory comes in and he's flexing his muscles about how, you know, Vince won the match for him. So everything is great. You know, it's all working out. And then here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin, which Steve Austin comes to the ring and he immediately starts getting the beers together and slashing the beers together and all this. And he gives Austin Theory a stunner. And Austin Theory bounced up in the air like he was riding a bicycle. And then came down and flopped continuously till he ended up on the floor. It was ridiculous. So then Austin, of course, does his old routine with Vince where he tries to win Vince over by giving him beer. Vince is stupid and is, you know, like, oh, okay, this time it'll actually work. It's like Charlie Brown. You see this, that WWE's content is geared towards, you know, children. But a lot of the gags and stuff like that, a lot of the routines, it comes from like old cartoons, you know. So like some of the archetypes rather are from like old cartoons. So this is like Charlie Brown, where Lucy, puts the football down, and Charlie Brown tries to kick the ball, but she keeps moving it. And you think that one day he'd smarten up and stop trying to kick the ball as Lucy holds it, but it's something about Charlie Brown where he just trusts Lucy, you know. So even though she keeps betraying him, she just keeps trusting him. That sounds like a lot of men these days. In any event, Stone Cold Steve Austin gives Vince McMahon a beer, and Vince tastes the beer, and it's so weird. It just reminds me like this old man in the hospital, tasting something for the first time. He's like, "Oh, this is pretty good. It's pretty good, pal." And him and Steve are going to drink some beer. Then Vince gets kicked, and in taking the kick, he starts to stumble and sway and trip and slip and slide. Vince sold that kick like JFK sold that bullet. And Vince was basically barely standing up when Austin came for the stunner. Austin is laughing his ass off because this is absolutely ridiculous. It's the worst stunner ever in history. And guess what? I doubt Vince gives a shit. I doubt Vince gives a damn about how bad it looks. In fact, him falling all over the place may actually make the story better. Now, I feel comfortable, Billy Body, like I said, I think I talked about him earlier. He was talking about on K100 that they're doing all this Vince McMahon stuff because they're going to put it in a documentary. I think it's for Showtime or HBO or one of the two. And so this kind of him being involved in WrestleMania was kind of for that reason, to show that he's just so they can have footage of him as a really old man still being involved physically in the product. He just threw a couple of clotheslines and then absolutely turned to ash the moment anybody applied any pressure. Vince McMahon is like a muscular sandcastle. It is absolutely hilarious. Speaking of muscular, this masculine hug between him and Austin Theory was absolutely hilarious. Well, Austin Theory is like, "Give me a hug, Grandpa," and Pencil's like, "Ah, you little rascal, get over here." This is so nonsensical, bro. So Austin gave everybody a stunner. Vince, I don't know if he escaped it. I don't know what happened. But the GIF has been the GIF has been everywhere. It's the worst stunner in human history. And I'm almost certain that Vince doesn't care. In fact, it probably helps the story. So Vince does get involved with Pat McAfee. And it was fun. So everybody who guessed that and I was saying it was wrong, I'm saying that I was wrong. I admit that I was wrong. Vince was wrestling Pat McAfee. It was just going to be an impromptu match and not anything that we're going to actually support via marketing. So Pat McAfee, he finally gets back into the ring, and him and Stone Cold are going to share some beers. And he takes a stunner, Pat McAfee does, because you don't trust anybody. And he's spewing water all the way back. And people are saying like, "Oh, it's an homage to the Shane McMahon stunner spot from 98, 9-ish, where he did the spray all over the place." And so McAfee was like in a straight line. It was great. Steve Austin brought such tremendous energy. He always brings some tremendous energy with him. Then you got over in the corner, as Austin is going to the corners celebrating, Pat McAfee is still laying on the ground, pouring beer into his mouth with his eyes closed. Like he's technically still selling the stunner, but he's also drinking beer at the same time. Like, shit, it's free beer. You don't waste free beer, right? Nobody does that. Why would you do that? Why would you want to? Why would you want to do that? So the fever dream of Austin and McMahon from 1999 in modern day was really fun. Did I need it? Probably not. But fuck shit. If I was going to get it, I thought it would have been great. You know, putting a little bit more emphasis on Austin Theory would have been nice. Especially since you announced him as a future WWE World Heavyweight Champion and all that. You kind of should be a little bit more hands-on with him. But I thought it was fine. I thought that whole thing was fine. Steve Austin being back involved physically is very different and adds a different layer of energy to this. So Steve Austin is always welcome because the pop brings the energy and it brings the energy, and we really need that. And it seems like he's really fit here, you know, because Austin is the only one who really can formally police the McMahon when he's doing something. You know, he needs to be stopped. He needs to get a stunner. So, yeah. How many times you gotta learn this lesson, old man? So this leads us, of course, to the main event: Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Truly a big fight field. No super duper huge entrance for either one of the guys. Just a lot of pyro. Roman wants to be acknowledged. Brock says that he's coming for blood. He starts taking his gloves off at the beginning of the match, and you're thinking, "Oh boy, they're about to get it in. They're about to get it in." And they were monster trucks banging into each other, which is what I like from a men's match. But it's just kind of like, I feel like I've seen this 100 times already. And it's not because, oh, it's Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Of course, they've done it twice already. It's like, no, it's the finisher fest match where the bulk of the match is guys hitting big moves. And by big moves, I mean essentially the same move over and over again. 4 Superman punches, 3 spears, 2 F5s, 6 German suplexes. It's like, that's the entire fucking move set. It's just them repetitiously using the same fucking moves over and over again. And then they did a Kimura spot. I was telling you, bro, I was tired. Like that's why I kind of want to give you the heads up. Like when I did the WrestleMania review the previous night, I was off of 4 hours of sleep, and I was doing that review and was like, holy shit, I was still jazzed up, and I still couldn't sleep when I got done with it, and it was on like 1 a.m. Now I'm off of, it's probably about 3.5 hours of sleep, and I'm completely and totally wiped out because it's like I got drained watching this show. This show literally just, it was an energy vampire. And it really kind of aped off the goodwill of night 1. Now, I'm not saying it was that bad. It wasn't like awful, you know, never watch it again. But it was nothing that occurred on the show where you was kind of like, wow, this is earth shattering. You know, this is game changing. Roman winning both belts is just Roman winning another fucking match. And he wins the fucking match using the same moves he always wins the fucking match with. And nothing else happened. Like, we all had these theories that, you know, he was going to beat Brock and then, you know, The Rock or somebody's going to come out there and challenge him, stand in his face, get in his way, ruin his moment. And that didn't happen. So he was allowed to have WrestleMania. And I'm cool with that. Because in story and in context, Brock did a little bit of nod when Roman won. Because Roman did kind of win clean. Kind of. There were some Paul Heyman distractions. For instance, Paul, as he was luring Brock away from Roman, he just started whining about how much he loves Brock Lesnar. And this was all Roman's idea. He wanted nothing to do with it. It was all Roman. I love you, Brock. I want to come back with you. I'm sorry. And then Roman spears Brock through the barricade and almost wins by count out, which, you know, would have begged the question, would he actually won the title by count out? Which, you know, the answer is probably no. But since it was the main event of WrestleMania, we weren't going to know anyway. And then you had the not so subtle, the very subtle actually, push of the rope in so that Roman could grab it after the Kimura. That was a really good spot. And, you know, most people didn't pay attention to it. They weren't well seeing it, even though the camera was right on it. They really didn't see it because it was very subtle. And Roman wins, and so afterwards, Brock kind of gives him the acknowledgement. He didn't say, "Oh, Roman, you're the best," or whatever. He just kind of gave him the little nod, like, "All right, he got me," you know. So I expected something to happen, more, but it was like, no, 8 Superman punches, 32 German suplexes, 4 F5s, 6 spears. I'm like, fuck, it's going to be that kind of day. They're not going to even attempt to do anything new, attempt to do anything fresh. We're just going to have a regular ass Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns match. And to be quite frank, that works sometimes, but it's too formulaic and it's not fun. It's not fun to watch, like not all the time. Like it makes every match feel the same. And like it's okay to have a routine, which, Brett has a routine. Shawn has one. Hogan has one. Rock has one. Everybody has one who's a major star. You have a routine. You have a set of things that you do in every match. Of course, you're going to do certain things in every match, But when that's the only thing you do, when 90% of your match is German suplex, I'm sorry. It's very, like, once you've seen it and you see it again and again and again, it kind of loses luster. You started reaching the point of diminishing returns. And then the more matches you see where it's basically the same thing. Like Brock's match at Royal Rumble was essentially the same thing. He grabbed Bobby Lashley suplex. It's like, oh, God. Damn, what the fuck? Like, what happened to Brock where he just got so fucking lazy and he realizes I don't have to do that much. So I'm not going to do anything. And it's like, oh, shit, that's the worst. Right? That's the fucking worst. So the story is all fine and dandy. The right decision was made, of course, but they ruined the big fight and it was flat as far as I'm concerned. I know people are going to be like, no, it was great. I'm thinking to myself, you know what? It was okay. Because even though Brock has sort of a routine match, if you do it right and you tell the right story, then it works. It almost always works. Brock, when he was working with, Finn Balor and Ricochet and all those guys, Brock's style worked. When he's working with Bryan Danielson and AJ Styles, his style of, I'm just going to grab guys and throw them, it works. I'm going to hit you with an F5, pin you, it's over. That works. But when it's 2 F5s, bunch of German suplexes, barrel through the barricade, it's like, oh my God. Nah, it's too much, man. It's too much of the same shit. And I feel like I had seen this match, not just before because the names were involved already, but because it just felt like it didn't fit the magnitude of the hype that was around it. It just didn't feel like it was hitting for me. So it hit the just okay mark, but it wasn't necessary that, I would go back and watch it again. Maybe I'll go back and watch it again and have a different opinion. I don't know. We'll see. But this is my initial opinion. And my initial opinion is the match was okay. And that was it. That's just kind of all. But let me know what you guys thought. I thought that this show was, again, too long. It was like 3 hours and 40 minutes. If they had gotten rid of that Sheamus and New Day thing, we might have been better off. If they could have done something special with the women's match, maybe made a ladder match or something like that, it might have been better off. But this night got absolutely scorched by the previous night. But I think a lot of it depends on whether you liked AJ Styles versus Edge and whether you like Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn. The latter being a heavily comedy match, it was still very entertaining because I didn't know what the hell I was watching, nor why I was watching it. And then some of it was actually funny. So it was a mixture of, interesting things. The Edge and AJ Styles match, like I said, I just had a problem with the pace. I think the pace was too slow, and I did not care for the finish. I didn't care for Damian Priest just randomly shows up out of nowhere. Look, I know that AJ Styles and Damian Priest had an issue earlier this year that actually facilitated Damian Priest's, preparation to go heel. That was all well and good, but it wasn't mentioned on TV afterwards. You have to watch TV every week in order to realize and, come to that conclusion that, this has been a character thing that's been changing for him for a while. You would have to know him and be already attached to him to know that, he's being changed, but whatever. Well, let me know what you guys think. I'm tired. I'm probably about to get some sleep. Like, share, and subscribe. Wish me a happy birthday, because this video will be going up on April the 4th. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.